It. We would like to resume the final session according to the program. We were supposed to conclude the final session at 6:40, and then we would have the concluding session, the wrap up. But however, we will be modifying this. We are uh, not having the break. We would like to have the roundtable discussion 3 and the wrap up together. And we'd like to shorten the program about by 15 minutes or so. So we are aiming for the closing and the ending of the session around 7:30. But then we will be canceling the tea break, the second tea break. Mm. Earlier, we were talking about what would be the possible research agendas for the future. We were also talking about what should be the medical care and medical support checkups. Well, these two are related issues, and this is what we have been discussing until now. There are, I believe, more that needs to be said about these topics, so we will be continuing this discussion. And in that sense, we've already entered into the discussion topic of the roundtable number 3. And after this third session, we will have the overall wrap-up, looking back into the entire discussions we've had in this symposium. And at the end, we will have closing remark from Sebastian, and we hope to end by 7:30. Now, let us continue our discussion from pre-break. Professor Yamada, and also there's an expert here from Fukushima on pediatrics. And Miss Professor Yamada, and also we have someone from the Minami Soma, which has a relatively high radiation dose level in the north of Fukushima. Dr. Yoshida has been active in Minami Soma, so we will be hearing from them first. My name is Yamada. I am a pediatric physician. At the end of August this year, we went to Fukushima for medical consultations and health consultation. At that time, I encountered someone, an adult, who said that he or she was going through a thyroid the surgery in Fukushima Medical University the following month. The person, actually that was a lady, adult, who said that he cannot trust FMU. So actually she would like to get a second opinion, and she would like to get the surgery, if possible, from other hospital. As we discussed, the patient said that if the diagnosis is different in the second opinion in another hospital, she will not be, from economical reasons, monetary reasons also from her schedule, she will not be able to commute to another hospital outside of Fukushima. In case of a thyroid surgery, it is necessary to monitor and also take medications throughout the rest of her lifetime. And so taking that into consideration, she would probably have to choose a hospital within Fukushima Prefecture. But if you look at a hospital that is capable of undertaking thyroid surgery, the only choice she has is FMU. So what should she do? That was her question to me. And I really could not find the right and immediate good answer to her, good response to her. Pre-March 11th, 2011, there were various issues that Fukushima Prefecture was faced with, and because of the March 11th, all these issues came to the surface. Because Fukushima is where there is a shortage of hospitals and medical centers, and in that area, FMU has disproportionate power. When I visited Fukushima this April, I stopped by a kiosk, and there I saw a magazine called Zaikai Fukushima, and the cover story of that was the vested interest of Fukushima FMU. So I was very interested. I read the article, and what I learned from that article was that previously, before March 11th, the finance of FMU was going through a lot of difficulties, but because of March 11th, or thanks to March 11th, they are now lucrative. And FMU has always wanted to create a new word, and they have been saying that it's for the sake of the prefectural citizens. And they're saying that if there is an increase of cancer in the future, they will be creating a new word that is specializes in oncology. But that contradicts directly from their statement saying that cancer will not increase because of March 11th. But at the same time, they're claiming that they are building an oncology word for the sake of the people. So they are, in a way, using this situation to their advantage. That was what article was talking about. Segawa-san earlier was continuing what Segawa-san was saying earlier. There will be further gap in terms of authority and power and capabilities between FMU and other hospitals in Fukushima Prefecture. And if that situation arises, then most people, most cancer patients would have to choose FMU if that is the only choice they have or the best choice in terms of oncology or surgery, even if deep inside they mistrust it. So in that sense, this gap in power and authorities or competence between FMU and others will widen. That's what I expect, and this is a serious matter. And in that sense, because of March 11th, because we are faced with March 11th, we need to actually improve and ameliorate the medical services provision in Fukushima Prefecture. We need to utilize the budget so there are other alternatives for the patients. To solely concentrating to establish this sense of monopoly by FMU should not be the choice. The fact that for thyroid surgery and etc., patients have no choice but to rely on FMU is unfortunate. I have always thought that, for example, in case of a new thyroid cancer patient, if they would, for example, start a class action lawsuit, for example, then they could obtain various resources and they could actually provide additional information as well. Maybe lawsuits would be the only solution, so I was hoping that they would become the plaintiff, but in reality, it is hard for them to do that. And especially for people who might need to undergo thyroid surgery in Fukushima, if they have a medical history of such surgery, then it is difficult for them to start a lawsuit. And in a way, they would choose to live secretly, hiding the fact that they have such medical history or they have had dealing with FMU because of the stigmatization. And in a way, they have nothing to do but just keep quiet. For those with thyroid cancer, we also need to think about how we could support these thyroid cancer patients. And if the thyroid cancer indeed was caused by radiation, then we need to clarify, because currently it is said that the genetic plays a role in those who are more prone and more sensitive to radiation and those who are not. So in that sense, if in terms of the genetic defects for children who could be sensitive to radiation, we need to clarify that information. And for those who are more vulnerable, we need to prioritize our support and measures for these people. But currently, that is not possible. If for cancer patients, maybe they can undergo surgery and get better, but but they probably are very prone to radioactivity to begin with. So even if they cured that cancer, they would have other diseases and other illnesses as well. We need to be ready and prepare ourselves to that situation. So instead of just calling and voicing our demands, we would need to take such actions and think about the support system, etc. Otherwise, the people, the actual victims, and people who are suffering will not be on our side. And I also have many opportunities to discuss with evacuees in Okayama, for example, and in other areas. We have also had consultation sessions of evacuees in Tokyo. So far, we have held such session 4 times. And we know that evacuees are undergoing extreme hardship in terms of their everyday lives, and most evacuees are very keen on understanding this current situation of Fukushima. What is the radiation level? When we can return? And I have no answer to these questions. Today, it seems that it is impossible to return, that it is not a good idea to return. In terms of what future holds, I have no answer either. And the fact that these questions come up shows that there is no support for evacuees, especially self-evacuees. For those who went to Aichi or to Hokkaido, I know that the local municipalities and government are providing a very good support system for these evacuees. Aichi is doing very well, but why is the neighbor prefecture of Miyagi not doing anything? The people who evacuated to Miyagi are completely dispersed without any communication network. So in a way, there is a difference in the level of support that people receive. But that said, overall, all evacuees are experiencing hardship. The mandatory evacuees are pitied, but self-evacuees are understood as those who were paranoid or they decide to evacuate themselves. It was their decision. So in that sense, they are not part of the local community, not part nor part of the new community, and they are separated from their families. When I had the sessions in Tokyo, I had discussion with Mr. M, who is a supporter, and he asked me to make a statement that those who were evacuated, be it self-evacuees or not, had made the right decision. Because such statement is indispensable, needed, because no one tells them that that was the right decision to have evacuated. In Tokyo, there is intensive or collaborative medical centers where evacuees, for example, can go and get medical checkup, etc. And we are providing this information to evacuees as well. But however, participants to such checkups are very few, and not many people are part of such checkup schemes. The reason, according to Mr. M, is that first, they were relieved to know that they have the choice to get the checkup. However, because they have to work and because they have such hardship in terms of, for example, budgetary issues, they don't have money for public transportation to get to the hospital to get the checkup. So that is why they're not participating. Well, since I am a doctor, I think that it's a pity, but I also understand that for the people to participate in the checkup, we have to also support them in terms of the financial support. There are many people who need checkup. But first of all, what we need is to provide a support system for the evacuees in their new environments. Otherwise, in the current situation, most of the evacuees feel that they would rather choose to be in Fukushima and they would rather to return there. That they have no choice because they are separated from the family and they are faced with a possible imminent divorce if they do not return. And more of the people, such evacuees, return because of such pressure. More excuses will create saying that, look, there are so many people who have already returned, it's safe. So therefore, the support system is what we need to create first. And in reality, We have to understand what are the realities in terms of the day-to-day life of evacuees who have left Fukushima Prefecture. We have to grasp their needs, their requirements in a more comprehensive manner. I think that is indispensable. What to do about checkups, etc., examinations, etc. I do have my own opinion about this question as well. But then, since I've talked for quite a long time, I would like to give the microphone to someone else now.
The medical institutions within the prefecture, actually the people are really be very cautious of not eating the agricultural produce produced in within Fukushima prefecture, but actually it is sent to Okinawa or it is sent as the animal feed to elsewhere in Japan. So in this is, I feel, the spreading out of the radioactive victims, radiation victims throughout Japan. This action is, and I don't really think that the universities will get extra budget to research about this trend. So I hope international scientists will keep this in your mind and maybe that you can also help us to get the fund so that we can do the joint research and study. Um, like our colleagues has already spoke before. So the evacuees are forced to eat the contaminated food in the areas where they were evacuated. Um, the incineration is another problem. One school, they do the incinerator burning. That is the evacuated, I mean the area the evacuees are living there. And from that incinerator, the radioactivities, radiation is being spread out in the area. So the key here is information sharing by the entire nation. And the media role is very important that they need to disseminate right information. Talking about this, the level of the acceptable exposure or the doses is just the economically and politically, socially decided. So more scientific arguments on this matter, I think is more important, so that more Japanese people can deepen an understanding about this matter. We, of course, do the best uh, of what we can do, but definitely I'd like to pledge you that scientist cooperation is very essential. The internal exposure has been experienced by many other countries, and I'd like to have a special question to them, that if you have advice to Japanese people from your experience, I'd be appreciated. I am from, for the advice, this we would ask them to say later. I am from Chiba, the Noda city, and I am just a dentist. I am the collecting of the infant teeth because of the strontium 90 that they are spreading out nuclei now. Actually, this just spread it out, distributed in the same area with the cesium. In Minami Soma, there is cesium about 10% and also strontium 90. And this is in air. Contamination is not that much, maybe. But recently, everyone is focusing attention on the contaminated the wastewater. That's a leakage of wastewater in the Fukushima Daiichi. And it is said that the high-level contamination of strontium in that water, and that will be released in the ocean, I think it will be shall be very concerned, because we are fish eaters in Japan. And the strontium has the very similar characteristics with the calcium. They would reach to the bones of the human and stay there. And why the baby teeth I am gathering? That's another way that we can monitor the strontium. But of course, we cannot just pull out all the adult teeth. But for the baby teeth, that's naturally fall out, or for the adult teeth coming in. So it is very easy for us to collect. So in the past, there are some kind of the result of such measuring of the teeth. So for my patients, and I am telling, just don't throw them away, just keep. And if you want to keep them for the memory, that's fine, but at least please bring me one. So I'm trying to work it out with the university researchers, and also that there is by Basel in Switzerland, Basel Counties Institute, the research center, is helping us, and already they have detected certain amount of radiation. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, the children just start growing, and their first teeth may have higher contamination. For a person, just to bring me the baby teeth, that's no cost. But I asked the German Institute of Research Laboratory how much it would cost, and they told me that about 50,000 yen per tooth. I said, oh, so I really want the more governmental or the authorities support for this subsidy or the funding. And I would like to have citizens' involvement in this. And I would like to ask the people from Germany, do they have similar type of movement here or the similar type of dentist like me?
Very much, Mr. Yoshida, as well as Fujino. Japanese research system cannot be expected, including academia as well as the government of Japan. We cannot expect anything about these authorities. Initial radiation was not studied, and this drew my attention. Therefore, the report to be issued by the ANSCIA in the near future as to the research on the thyroid diseases in the initial phase, the ANSCIA report should say that it's an amazingly small number of information, and we have to identify why such situation can happen. First of all, the first culprit we have to suspect is the research center of the legal medicine. We have to confirm who is the culprit to cause this situation. There is a damage incurred already, and we have to support survivors and victims in terms of the health. However, such a supporting system, whether or not scientific community and a medical community can create such a supporting system or mechanism. In this sense, I'd like to ask for collaboration to overseas experts, because it will give us an opportunity to make an improvement, because we can use your examples to work on Japanese academia and Japanese scientists to make a betterment. The second issue is 20 millisievert. Below 20 millisievert, if you lived in this area, those people had to go back to their hometowns. However, this is quite wrong, as Kawano-san acutely pointed out. As to the voluntary evacuees, there has almost no support at all at the government. However, if you think about this act to support the victims' children, if you think about that, in the light of Act on Protection and Support for the Victims of Nuclear Power Plant Accident, it's really strange. It's almost a violation of this act. Therefore, we have to hold the government of Japan accountable for this situation, because we have a ground. Now, I'd like to ask for the opinions of Ms. Ito from Human Rights Now, and Mr. Kawasaki, and of course, I have to ask an opinion from lawyer Fukuda before Kawasaki-san. So, based on the former discussions, can you please share your ideas and thoughts? I also like to ask for opinions from the experts who kindly shared their views yesterday. At the same time, I'd like to ask for other people's opinions. Can I ask Ms. Ito to share your opinion? I shoot up my hand for question, but what you expect to me to share? There's an issue of the Children Act on the Protection and Support for the Victims. However, if you have your question, you can raise it. I totally agree with many people. For example, when we had a meeting of the Japanese Federation of Bar Association, if the radiation level is above 1 millisievert, people have to be encouraged to evacuate, and we made a recommendation for that, because we have to prevent the people from damaging their health because of such a wrong policy that the city, Nadaha, because those areas have below 20 millisievert, therefore they are forcibly driven back to their hometowns. However, we have to stop this, and we have to consider what we can prevent it from happening in the future. Now, my question, though it's very simple, because I'm not a change champion, And in the global recommendation as to the health examination, comprehensive health examination has to be provided. However, the government of Japan has denied it at all. For example, the urine examination and the blood examinations, the government says that it's unnecessary, therefore it's no meaning to perform it. In addition to that, as to the internal exposure, also it's performed, however, all of the values are really low that we don't have to pay attention to that. So when we had a discussion with the government officials, they said that what's so important in performing or conducting blood examinations, and we failed to persuade the government officials to understand the importance of the blood examinations as well as the urine examinations. It's really chagrin for me not to be a medical expert. So if from the viewpoint of the medical experts, if we can identify, or scientists can identify what are the mandatory minimally necessary examinations with clear reasons for that, it's really helpful because we have opportunity to talk with the medical associations, the member doctors, as well as the other HCPs. And they said that we can develop further for the ordinary medical examinations, and then not only relying on the Fukushima Medical University, we can prepare a good medical examination system for the Fukushimans. Some doctors say that. However, I don't know whether it's right or not because there are many issues, including thyroid diseases as well as the cancers. Therefore, what kind of comprehensive medical examinations we can provide, or even if it's not comprehensive, at least what kind of examinations we have to provide to Fukushimans. If you give me such an information as an expert, it's really appreciated. Then, as to the ANSCARE report, we'd like to issue a statement for that too. Therefore, if you agree with our principle, please contact me, and then we'd like to reflect your opinions when we put together our report to the ANSCARE, and we'd like to announce it, or we'd like to share it as soon as possible to make our report better. So I'd like to ask for your cooperation. Thank you very much. As to your question, I'd like to ask for related people's experts' opinions. So before that, I'd like to ask you to share your opinion. Thank you very much. I'd like to share the current situation of Sendai City in Miyagi Prefecture. I believe many of you have already known that, but then Sejim number 1 is Miyagi Prefecture according to the MHLW data. Still, there is only one thyroid cancer examination conducted, and that's all. There's no more examination, and then all of the urine examination specimen is brought to Akita, and the thyroid cancer specimen is brought to Yamagata. Therefore, together with doctors, the urine examination and the thyroid examination should be put together as one to prevent the detriment effect from radiation. However, because we don't have much money, therefore, within the Gelma project, and if we can perform the thyroid examinations, I have to stop all of these volunteer activities, and I have to earn money to support myself. By the way, I was a farmer, and I live in the mountain where only woods are useless at all, and I have to be on welfare given to my wife, not to me. Thank you very much for sharing a very hard predicament happened to you. How about you, Kawasaki-san? I'm a Kawasaki lawyer, and thank you very much for sharing very intriguing stories, and I have learned a lot already. There are many arguments and issues you raised, and all of them, or most of them, are not resolved, and I don't know whether or not I can add another issue to you. Now, I'd like to talk about the Act on Protection and Support for the Victims of Nuclear Plant Accident, and the point is that just having a framework of law is not sufficient. We have to make it enforceable, and that's what we lawyers have to focus on, and we will do that. Now, the Act on Protection and Support for the Victims of Nuclear Power Plant Accident. Based on that, we have to be able to support and save our victims. However, we are kind of stuck. Nowhere to see, and how much low dose can cause the actual tangible health effect. We don't know it because this is within the area of scientists, and therefore only scientists can get together to talk about it, and we are policy makers and we are not scientists. And therefore, what kind of policies we had and what kind of discussions we had, this is only what we can refer to to rely on. And in that sense, ICRP recommendation says 1 millisievert per year. If this threshold is surpassed, then this is an excessive radiation, and such a situation should not happen to the public. And we have to realize it, and I believe many doctors and experts want to use this as a kind of standard to deepen the discussions. Scientifically, our idea does not move at all. We are stuck. However, under this situation, we try to be as active as possible, including lobbying activities. And when I look at our posting in our website, many people said that and we don't know the children's effect by the low dose radiation. We have to clarify that, but we have to set up a system as a policymaker in that sense where it's a really meaningful argument. However, the argument alone cannot bring us the ideal situation. That means that in the future, how much the health impact incurred by the radiation, we have to delve into this. And we have to see certain details. Without that, we cannot see any breakthrough. This is my idea, and this thought has come to me. So the assumption of the act on the protection and support for the but the act has passed or bypassed the very important starting point. That's why we stuck and we don't see anywhere to go. However, everything should be on the same continuum, and then we can see the breakthrough that will bring us move forward. Thank you very much. Dr. Imanaka, you're a scientist, not in the medicine, but you're an expert and scientist. Therefore, within a scientific view, can you please share your thoughts with us? In front of you, yes, I wear a mask of academic person, and I say I practice science, but I have many thoughts and ideas, and I have my own belief and faith. For instance, what I have done in Iidate City, I try to fulfill my mission as a scientist. But please draw the line that between what I have to do and what I personally want to do. The problem is that Dr. Yamashita does not have such a delineation or differentiation while practicing science. Without noticing, Dr. Yamashita makes decision, meaning that Dr. Yamashita makes a policy and a decision, but it should not be done by a scientist or academic person. The academia has to provide information and the knowledge, and then policymaker can make science-based decisions. So the scientist should be information provider, not a decision maker. For example, I now work on the radiation issue in that city, and the Japanese government's action was disgusting, and nobody seemed to work on that. That's why I stood up. However, we have to think about always the Iidate people, because there should be something good for Iidate City. But to be frank with you, I don't know what's good in my work. But I always said that there should be something good in what I am doing. Maybe it's scientifically beneficial, and it might be good for the health impact elucidation, but different from KKK. I always have a rationale and the ground and justification, and when I don't know, I can say, no, I don't know. But many people confuse everything. That's why many problems occur. Now, this meeting of the CSRP, I don't know whether or where my position is. Yes, you said you take me as a scientist. However, I am a citizen of Japan, therefore I cannot wear only a hat of scientist. I have to wear more hats. For example, after 3/11, the nuclear power plant accident happened, and the action taken for that by the government of Japan was really disgusting, terrible. And I feel that the government of Japan tried to hide and conceal people because they didn't disclose any data. 80,000 to 90,000 people evacuated, and they said that severe contamination happened. However, as far as the TV programs and the newspaper media concerned, they just said that everything was all right. However, behind the scene, severe contamination going on, and I got such information from many sources. So my decision first is that, okay, the government of Japan tried to hide everything from us. There is a sideline here. That is JCO accident. When Fukushima accident happened, there is a special law on the nuclear power plant accident, and that law was invoked. And in September 1999, there was a JCO accident, and in the same year, December, this law was enacted. And when this special law was enacted, the government said that the JCO accident did not have a consistent information source. That's why there were many chaos and confusion happened. Therefore, in order to prevent such thing from happening, off-site center should be established to put together all of the information at one central center. However, different from what they said back then, no information disclosed at all after Fukushima accident. Therefore, I know that the government of Japan does not have any intention to disclose information. That's why I stood up to make up for that slack. And then, as you know, there is a huge havoc happened because this law did not work at all. There is a manual of prevention of disaster at the nuclear power plant, and the government of Japan has developed a very good plan to deal with an accident. For example, if the emergency situation is declared immediately on the spot, the action center should be established under the leadership of the vice minister, the government officials, the safety committee people, Fukushima prefecture, local government, the firefighters, SDF members, and police officers have to get together to this action center to take an immediate action. And if this was implemented, or if we can tell whether the contamination happened and which people have to be evacuated. It should be known. However, according to the memoir of the off-site center, they said that they know the evacuation of the local community people via TV program, and it was very shocking to me.
Pollution and contamination occurred in Namie to eat that day. Only few people knew. And some people was dispatched from the off-site center to the site, and measurement was taken. But from my perspective, at that point, the residents should have been evacuated or put in a safe area. I think that judgment wouldn't have been possible at that time already, but that was not undertaken. That decision was not taken at that point. We have been talking about FMU, and if I may talk about FMU, at FMU, there is whole body counter at FMU. That is a secondary medical institution with whole body counter. But then there was an order that was made that if residents come requesting a checkup, please do not allow them to use the whole body counter. That was the reality. And despite this situation, they seem to not learn any lesson from their past actions, and they are still claiming that they are working for the sake of the people of Fukushima Prefecture. Additionally, starting June 2011 or so, I felt that the risk evaluation is needed, the evaluation is needed, and these initiatives has to be undertaken by the government. But then I felt that it was very strange that the national government is not taking charge. It's the Fukushima prefecture that is taking the leadership in a way. The government did not take their responsibility. They gave all responsibility to the prefecture, and that is the damage that we are perceiving now. It is not too late to set up a right structure to provide support to evacuees all around Japan, including Miyagi and other area. That structure also need to incorporate the municipalities and local governments of the prefectural governments as well. That is my belief. And in terms of the cost and budget, well, the cost 1 trillion yen of budget that they have for unnecessary and wasteful decontamination effort can be shifted to setting up the right structure. Thank you very much.
100% with what Dr. Imanaka has said. I mean, the first thing that should have been done is a proper risk assessment based on reliable measurements of radioactivity in the environment. And this could really be done in a matter of months, although possibly taking longer here because of the complications caused by the earthquake and the tsunami. But this is why we're in this situation, because actually we don't have that data. Even the WHO did not have that data. It said that it had to rely on reported values given to it by the government for which it could not check. So this is really an unprecedented situation. I mean, for example, in 1986, when it was a minor compared with the rest of the Chernobyl accident, but the United Kingdom received some radiation contamination. And by July, I published a paper. I was asked to prepare a risk assessment for the UK. And I was able to do that on the basis of the data that was provided by those people who were responsible for the monitoring. And I assume there are people, organizations responsible for monitoring here, and I know that the Americans provided aerial surveys. That was in May, was that the American aerial survey of the area, I think?
Yeah, they started March 17th.
Yeah. So, but then there is the question of the internal exposure, which has to be added in. That appears, if all the results are correct, it appears that there's been very effective control of food stuff, although it might have been exported, as somebody said, to somewhere else. But it isn't too late to do that kind of risk assessment, and it really needs to be done. But it needs to be done by an organization that commands the trust of the population, not by one who has already lost their trust.
We have Dr. Musso and Dr. Otaki, who will also, to whom we also like to ask for the comments. And unrelated to the direct data of what we are talking about in Fukushima, as scientists from the animal target research, you have been involved in this issue with a certain distance. And you have, of course, contributed to this, what we are experiencing in Japan in Fukushima. And you mentioned earlier about the budgetary constraints and need for investment, difficulty of obtaining the investment for research. I think that is the case for Japanese government. But is it the situation of difficulty of obtaining the research budget in other countries like Europe and America? And what I'd like to ask is, maybe a voice of international scientists is needed for Japan today. And what do you think about contributing to the cause of Fukushima?
I think you're 100% correct. I think there needs to be an independent international oversight to provide some direction for the basic science that should be conducted. I think there have been some attempts to do this in Chernobyl, but they have not worked either, primarily because of a lack of funding. due to the political and economic crises that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union primarily. I don't think, despite the economic challenges in Japan, I don't think there's the same sorts of economic stresses that existed in that part of the world. So there's really no excuse. If you ask any scientist, if you ask anybody who's been involved in this kind of question, it's very clear that a panel of experts should be convened to make a list of the sorts of questions that should be addressed and how to go about doing that. And it's just a question of finding some funding to do that. Interestingly enough, I was approached in July, August of 2011, towards the end of the year after that, with that exact proposal from people I can't name here. And somehow, though, that collapsed, that effort ended very quickly after our work got started. So I'd like to see that reinitiated. I think that's important.
Very much. That's very encouraging. I feel encouraged. Professor Otaki? Yes, indeed. Globally, I think I fully agree with what Professor Musso had to say. And I think the situation applies to the Japanese situation as well. And we need to find some ways to obtain the fundings for the research in the future. We also need to collect fundings and contribution from different places. That's what we are doing for the, in terms of a coalition willing, we are getting the contributions, and we are very thankful for that financial support. And other than that, other than the financial aspect, there's another issue. One major hindrance when we release the data of our research is, how shall I put it, the criticism that is completely unfounded. Of course, we are willing to accept productive criticisms and positive criticisms, but these are just somewhat criticisms which is almost like a bullying. And when we do research on the internet, we tend to see such bullying criticisms at the very top of the search results. So they are very well prepared and technologically savvy, and they spread rumors that are completely unfounded as well. We were talking about self-evacuation and the indispensability of self-evacuation. But for people to decide to self-evacuate, I think we have a responsibility as a scientist to provide correct information. So we try to do the best in providing the right information, but we have so much countering detrimental forces of people who provide wrong information and rumors. And if people rely on the internet in terms of their search for information, it is difficult for these information seekers to find our information, scientific information, because it does not appear on the top of the search result. This is a serious situation. I don't know why, but I don't know if these criticisms are just personal attacks on, for example, people who hate me personally, but there must be various reasons for such criticisms. Some very famous people are also part of such criticism, and that is really causing difficulties and hindrance for us to communicate our information. And that is hindering the people to make their decision to evacuate, for example. Twitters and the internet really today is the core of information control. So if they have a technological power to control Twitter's, SNS, and the internet, it is difficult for us to counter that. I don't know the answer of what I should be doing or we should be doing, but what I can do is continue my effort even more to provide the research data. Yesterday, I had opportunity to talk with Professor Musso, and he said, also that in the United States there are similar situations as well. Of course, Professor Miso has a tremendous track record of his research. And I would like to also aspire to do the same, to provide good results and good research results. So in that sense, we'd like to continue to motivate myself and other people. So in that sense, that is what I would like to do. My name is Hebi from Koriyama City, Fukushima Prefecture. After March 11, 2011, people of Fukushima have been undergoing a very strenuous situation in terms of their day-to-day life. In the beginning, they felt anger, anxiety, sadness. Of course, there used to be anxiety because they don't know what their future holds. That is quite natural feeling. In terms of Fukushima, KKK is not trusted because most people feel that they are not guinea pigs. They're not willing to become the guinea pig. And that is the basis of their feelings. I don't want to be too emotional in my statement, but they have been put under hardship for such a long time, and the basis of the problem is that the government was not trusted and that the correct information was not provided. People trusted the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Health, and scientists who we believe that will be protecting our health and our well-being, but that was not the case. And that is why we cannot still find healing in the situation. In terms of the Act on Child Victims Law, I was also part of the negotiation with the Reconstruction Agency as well. We have been asking for public comment. We have submitted the requests as well. And within the request we've submitted, we requested that 1 millisievert threshold should be reestablished so that all children of the afflicted area needs to be saved, not only a limited area population. This is from the human rights perspective, something that is quite ordinary that we can expect. But however, many people, especially the bureaucrats, young bureaucrats of the Reconstruction Agency, do not understand our needs and what we have to say. And we feel extremely frustrated that they do not understand where we are coming from. Even the morning of the cabinet decision of this law, we were in front of the ministry building. We voiced our concerns, but even the media are not covering what we have to say. So in a way, this is a very one-sided view that is propagated even today. I am around 60, and in my generation, people actually experiencing various health concerns. Many people actually have cancers detected, and many people of my generation also say that they feel fatigue, sudden fatigue, and that is, I believe, something that we are seeing in children as well, in terms of early exposure and in terms of this continuous exposure and what we should do. There are many things that the government still have to do. So that is why when Anand Grover visited, I had an opportunity to speak with Anand Grover when he came to Koriyama. I told him that we need to continue to work to call for and demand what we have the right to demand, and we also have to think about the liquidators and the radiation workers. So what we are faced with today, it has to be covered more by media, but the problem is persisting. I still have a lot of concerns that the problem will persist in the future. If you were to give the request to the United Nations, I think what we need to voice as our demand from Fukushima, who experienced this disaster, is that we need to go no nuclear. Export of nuclear technology is completely impossible. And we have also issue of contamination water, and we also have the issue of extracting of the spent fuel rods. And at that timing, in the future procedures, we might need to further evacuate the children as well.
very much. Or you just said how untrustworthy what authorities typical in the government are doing. Dr. Sakiyama and Dr. Hoffman. I'm sorry I did not take notes of all the questions, and I don't really have a good memory of that. But I think there was a question about the internal exposure and another issue that Angelica spoke. Then another question about the conjunction of the medical work and the political intentions that will make a big bias of the medical practices, and that in fact ultimately goes against the protection of people. That's what the medicine should be going for. I am pessimistic whole thing. For example, talking about the victims or the exposing yourself to radiation. Medical radiation exposure, like X-rays, graphics, and Tsuda said only in terms of medical exposure, Japan is top one in Japan. And then in Japan, that every year the 10,000 people could have the cancer. That's what Rancet said. We went to the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare and asked, do you have any particular division to take care of this? It was actually 10 years ago. And Rancet mentioned that with this rate of X-ray, medical X-rays, medical irradiation, and Japan will have 10,000 patients of cancer, and Japan did not do anything. And this action is just totally opposite to what the Western governments are doing, particularly United States government. They did not even make any kind of guidances on what shall medical institutions and doctors shall be taking, what kind of measures they shall be taking. In Japan, just be open-handed, just let it be for the last 10 years. And that same government, can we trust anything for this government to do on the effect of low-level exposure? Talking about Itate village, we all know now their level of contamination is very high. Of course, it is also the open fact that Speedy's data was not publicized and was kept secretive. Of course, they made a list of thousands of the excuses, but none of those excuses can be applied to the high-level contamination in Idate village. They were not told anything about evacuation, preparation, or conditions of contamination. At that time, it was only June when they were told that they must evacuate right away. If they just go through the data, they could leave soon, but they did not want to make the truth open to the public because it was outside of 20 kilometers radius from the Fukushima Daiichi. For what reason do they want to protect the people's lives? Then when we talk about certain becquerels, they said, oh, this is what we measure. Then they will say, oh, don't open it. don't publicize it because it will become food scare. That will be really causing a lot of problems to the producers, agriculture producers in Fukushima. So this is like either or. You are just putting these two things in a scale: people's life and the industrial benefit. The industrial benefit side is almost touching on the ground. That's very heavy for in terms of priority of government policy. I don't know, this is not just one person's conspiracy. This is kind of the traditional characteristics or some kind of social environment that we have been having in Japan, or some kind of tradition-related attitude. I am pessimistic in that sense. For me, it is very clear lives of the people, particularly the lives of children, the most important, utmost importance. Everyone in Japan shall keep that in mind before they do any kind of action. What then shall we do, or can we do? Everyone, first, utmost importance is accurate information. Of course, it may take a long time, but this shall be supported. That foundation shall be good education. Even there is the good information, if you don't have ability to understand, then information means nothing. And I think Ministry of Education and the Culture is not doing anything about this. Good education and right information. Thank you very much. This is the question of science and the morality of scientists. Let's say for example, like I think what you said is collective orders before personal morality or the private morality. I think that's kind of social background in Japan. Dr. Hoffman, would you have some comment?
I agree to almost everything that has been said by my colleagues from Japan and from abroad. I just want to stress some points that, for me, there are options that you are about to use more, and you should even use much more. And one is bringing the support that you brought in for this conference. This is something that really helps the issues. I'm quite impressed by your very rational and your very interested and very logical approach to the contamination problems, to the risk problems. It is not usual that a population that is actually exposed is behaving like that. So this is, for me, a real grand chance to proceed in this issue to the mutual interest of the population living here, and also the international scientific community, which can only learn from this experience. So I would strongly endorse you in bringing in scientists from abroad, bringing in experts from abroad, getting involved as you did, getting organized as you did, and do not give up that this can make a difference in this area and also for others. So this is something that you are more advanced than other populations are and other people who are exposed are. And I can also assure you that the international scientific community is not a monolithic block of people who are not concerned and who will not help and who are only looking for money and stuff like that. So there's many exceptions to that, as you have found out in this conference. And we will help you to feel represented in the scientific questions that are here, so prevalent and so clear. And we will also help you to formulate your concerns in a way that scientists cannot ignore. And you might want to install something like a permanent scientific advisory board or a body like that that can actually vocalize concerns that you have and that maybe would have more impact on your politicians than your own votes could have. So this is at least my preliminary resume from that, and I can only congratulate you to this initiative to have this kind of conferences and to be so open and so honest with your concerns and with your doubts and with the things that you just feel you don't know, that I think there is a very large chance that things can change to the better if you keep on going this way. And I assure you that you're not alone. There's people in the world that will be happy to help you go this way.
Very much. I'd like to ask Sebastian to wrap up all of the session, but we got a response from a scientist. Therefore, as a counterpart and citizens of society, Ms. Ito, can I ask for your opinion? I know some people shooting up their hands, however, because of the time limitation, I don't have any time to ask for opinions other than Ito-san. Before Sebastian-san, I'd like to ask for Ms. Ito to share her thoughts. There's an examination value. Therefore, what kind of examinations sought after by mothers as well as the civil societies? First of all, at the evacuated area, cataract examinations and blood examinations have been performed for liquidator workers. The examinations are definitely necessary. Therefore, many examinations are provided, and we have to focus on that. Blood testing as well as the cataract test as well as the ECG. We have performed these type of examinations in addition to urine test and the blood test in the evacuated areas. Data of the blood work of the children is now disclosed, and a doctor plotted it in the graph, and it shows the peak of mean has declined, meaning that the immunology or immunological capability of children has deteriorated according to a certain expert. Mothers have a strong desire to perform blood work for their children. Another point I'd like to share, which is also important, is that, as Dr. Yamada mentioned, consultation should be given together with medical examinations. After medical examinations, data comes out, and sometimes those data put mothers in a very worrisome situation, and many of them want to have medical expert opinions. Without such a consultative support, just having examination may put the mother in a very worrisome situation. Therefore, in order to prevent it, consultation should be given side by side with examinations. Now, we have conducted this conference already 3 times, and the heavy issue we have to work on is what we have to do from now on. Already 2.5 years have passed, and we are now approaching to the 3rd year. Number 3 is a very important number. However, all of the people, victims and supporters, have fatigues, and those who try to protect children as much as possible, they are also fatigued too under this situation. How we can connect scientists with goodwill to citizens. I'd like to do something. I want to be a bridge to connect the scientists with goodwill or consciousness and the citizens. Dr. Osaki said that some people are exposed with the negative campaign on the internet. Maybe we can have countermeasures by using social networks such as Facebook. If we have tons of likes on the Facebook, maybe it can be a countermeasures against such a groundless negative campaign conducted by the authority, because you have worked so hard on the field together with victims, and we have been encouraged so much. There is a consciousness existed among scientists. And we have referred your articles on the internet over and over again because your work on the net is very encouraging. And this has happened since 3/11, and we feel bound to this face-to-face meeting, and I believe, of course, it's very important. If we will show the target understandable to a layperson like me, then we can think about specific ideas. If you show the specific target in each area, it makes it easier for us to do our business. At any rate, what I want to say is that we'd like to identify the next step because we have had 3 conferences already, though everyone is so fatigued. And as I mentioned, there are many scientists with consciousness, and I believe they have fought against the pressure to fulfill mission. And we don't want to put those work in a vain. Therefore, one of the responsibilities as a citizen, we have to disseminate and share that outcome. So it's kind of catchable in my view. So I wish I'd like to establish a kind of mechanism where the scientists and layperson like us can have a good conversation or dialogue from now on.
Regarding the items for checkup examination, I'd like to just comment one point. We have been thinking about what kind of examinations necessary to take place in Tokyo. Some of the examinations are very costly, so that cannot be undertaken overall. Depending on the children, and the items should be different. So we need to take into consideration the various factors. So we have to be realistic in terms of when we make demands, we need to be pragmatic in requesting those that can be realizable. In case of Tokyo, we are targeting only the children of evacuees. But for example, when it comes to blood sampling of infants, there are only limited number of medical facilities and hospitals that can undertake infant blood collection. So in that sense, if the hospital focuses only on adult patients, they won't be able to do that. Also, the medical devices are quite limited for ECG, for example, for certain specialized hospitals. And for pediatric hospitals, first we need to put anesthesia on the infants so that or children so that they don't move. They need to put them to sleep. And just for 3 children or infants, it took us 3 hours to take ECG. So in that sense, we need to be pragmatic in submitting the plan and request that is realizable in who's going to do it and where we can do it. I had someone who came to me with a skin abnormality of the children. So, for example, that can be covered in the general and a checkup at the time of age 1 or age 18 months. If there is some kind of abnormality that the nurse can record and and keep the record somewhere, then we can understand the overall trends. We need to have certain number of patients or targets so that we can understand the overall trends. This is something that is possible. On our part, we are doing blood, urinary tests, ECG, weight, height, and eyesight. As for the blood test, the thyroid test is very pricey. So unless we can make it free, it's hard to implement thyroid examination. What is convincing today is the blood cell counts, or the white blood cells or red blood cell counts. But for example, I'm wondering, in the case of the United States, for infants who have undergone CT scan when they were infants, I understand that their the examination starts 3 years after the CT scan, and that the examination involves leukemia test as well. And also brain tumor test is also undertaken on these infant patients, which means that there is minimum measures for infants who have undergone CT scans, starting with blood test and white cell counts, a type of white cells, that's undertaken as a minimum. So in that sense, because there is already a practice that is established in the United States, we can convince the Japanese government that we should do the same. So in terms of minimum requirements, that's what we like to get as minimum demand. And other than that, we need funding. And if we forego the Olympic 2020 Tokyo Olympics, then we will have enough funding. But that is not the case. So in that sense, we need to focus on pragmatic measures and pragmatic plans with priorities set clearly. As for the ECG, cesium tend to concentrate in the heart, so that is why we can use the ECG and result of the school children. Yes, because school children undergo that test. It's already implemented. It's already in practice. So what we really need is to really use the data and return that information to the children. As for the blood test, as was mentioned before, we need to have a more in-depth biological test in terms of blood tests in Japan, more than what is done currently in Belarus. If you were to collect the blood and put the needle in children, then we'd like to make a full utilization of the blood sample. I'm sorry, the time is limited, so as a moderator, I'd like to conclude and wrap up this discussion. So we'd like to wrap up the discussion. Of course, we need to do first what we can achieve, and we really need to talk about the details now. That is my feeling. Thank you very much. I am truly sorry to continue speaking. It's important to have a very comprehensive examination, but what we need before that is we need to do something about their daily lives of people, not the examination. The radiation exposure issue is a low dose radiation. We need to make sure that people can live their ordinary lives. So we need to lower more ordinary or habitual disease, or for example, we need to make sure that heart disease or other habitual disease can be reduced, so that we know why people actually die. By understanding why people actually die, we can understand more the impact of the radiation. So first, what we need to do is to make sure that evacuees and afflicted people can live their normal lives, so they don't die from other causes. Thank you very much. Because the time is limited, we need to interrupt the discussion. I'd like to apologize for that. Now, I would like to ask Sebastian to wrap up and make a concluding remark, please.
Also, für mich war das ein großer Gewinn, an dieser Konferenz teilzunehmen, wo im Titel steht Bürger, Wissenschaftler, Symposium.
Conference entitled Conference of Citizens, and
So muss das sein.
I'm very
Bürger,
grateful to
Wissenschaftler.
be invited and could participate this meeting. The utmost importance you have put on
Ich habe viel Zeit verwendet auf den Kampf gegen die Strahlenschutzverordnung in Deutschland.
I had a long history of
Deshalb bin
fighting
ich besonders froh, dass dieses Thema hier auch angeschnitten
on
wurde.
the radiation effect, the protection in Germany.
Das ist leider
I'm
ein
grateful
internationales
that I
Phänomen,
had a
dass die
chance and
Strahlenschutzverordnung
opportunity
von den
to
Tätern
share
gemacht worden
my
ist.
experiences with you. this type of laws or the acts, ordinances are aiming to protect the radiation effects are happening, was established in many countries, but most of them were drafted and adopted by the ruling party, or the ruling side, or government authority side, and very little involvement of local citizens. What I want to see in Japan is to come up with the Japanese scientists to do the comprehensive comparison study between Japanese law and German law, together with the Japanese counterpart. I am also a pessimist. I think most of the scientists are. I'm pessimist, but I do have hope.
Über diese
I don't
Geschichte mit den
abandon
100
my hopes.
Millisievert von der Medizinischen Hochschule in Fukushima.
Fukushima Prefecture Medical University still announcing 100 millisievert. This should cause grave concern, raise a great concern in international community. This is terrible, horrifying fact. I am gathering all the data and document that contains this kind of horrible, chaotic sentences. And this paper today, I will definitely include this in my file. Outside of this conference room, I talked with my colleagues about our future and what we can do.
Da habe ich nicht viel Hoffnung, dass das was bewegt, aber was mir einleuchtet.
Needless to say, it's essential to send a petition, send a position paper to government or United Nations. But it will not work out as we experienced already. Some idea it is more feasible, which I think is very short, open letter of questions, and publicize this in major scientific journals. This 100 millisievert, actually this writing here that no effect has been recorded or confirmed at the dose level of less than 100 millisievert. Put this open question on this.
Mehrfach ist diskutiert worden, die Frage, evakuieren, wegziehen.
Somebody really had
das
to
ist für mich
have
sehr
to
belastend,
answer
weil
it.
ich dazu keine Empfehlung geben möchte.
In fact, there were a lot of speeches and ideas and comments about the evacuations and about people's lives and what is the mandatory evacuations, and I have no answers to those all the questions and the raised issues.
Meine Kinder zu nehmen und aus meiner Umgebung wegzuziehen, meine Heimat zu verlassen, meinen Beruf zu wechseln, all diese Dinge.
Reflecting this thought of myself and imagine I will just move out from where I am living and will be going to my work without my family or let my family evacuate to elsewhere. Just can't imagine. However, In reality, in Japan, there are numerous
Viel auf die Politik geschimpft, zu Recht.
areas where the children shall be evacuating or moving out from there immediately. We have been criticizing
Das bedrückt mich nicht
politically
so, weil ich von
or
der
our
Politik nie so viel
politicians'
gehalten habe.
actions over these matters. That's nature of the course, natural. And many people are
Was mich
angry
mehr
against
beschäftigt ist, dass
about
so viele
what the
Wissenschaftler
politicians are doing, but
weltweit und eben
I'm
auch
old
jetzt
enough to
in
feel
Japan
this is what politicians are.
auf der falschen Seite stehen.
What I feel the grave issue is many scientists in Japan and in other countries were speaking
Diese
very
Leute
loud
verraten nicht nur die Bürger,
on the
von denen sie
position
bezahlt werden,
of
sondern auch ihr
the
Wissenschaftsethos.
force side, not right science side. These people are placing citizens under higher risk. Not only that,
Vielleicht können
they
die
are
IPPNW
betraying
dort helfen. Dort gibt es
their
viele
morality as
Psychotherapeuten, die Erfahrung mit
scientists.
Rauschgiftsüchtigen haben, dass sie vielleicht den Wissenschaftlern, die auf der falschen Seite stehen, helfen, da wieder rauszukommen.
IPPMW may be able to work with us and support our
Wir haben heute
ideas.
wenig gesprochen über den Zustand in dem Kernkraftwerk Fukushima selbst.
But at the moment, in my thoughts, I have a little regret. Last 2 days, we did not talk that much about Fukushima and Fukushima's problem-solving issues, our nuclear reactor, the Fukushima Daiichi issues. It is evident that the Fukushima Daiichi is under threatened condition, very critical condition. This is just like the night with red armor should stand up
einen guten Rat hat, wie man diese
to rescue that reactor.
in dem
I don't
Kernkraftwerk
care
Fukushima bergen.
the night inside is called IAEA or not. You see the spent fuel still staying in the pool, cooling pool in Fukushima Daiichi.
Und
We
erzählen Sie Ihren
need
Kindern, was wir hier
some night in the lead armor to come to rescue us. IAEA soldier, whoever. I don't care if there is a savior.
Very much for beautifully wrapping up today's discussion. When we had a discussion, you said to me that you would summarize what we discussed, and if your remark missed anything, you asked me to follow it up. However, you perfectly covered everything we wanted you to say, and all of the gist and essence is congealed in a short remark. Thank you very much, and I know you are very tired for a long day. Therefore, I'd like to conclude this session now. But to me, this round table session is unforgettable, memorable event to me because it sheds a light on the current situation of Fukushima as well as the predicament of Fukushimans. And in that view, we review
what scientists have to do and what are the missions for them. And then I call it ethical problem, because for the economical reason, there's a huge, too much compensation and price paid by the citizens in Fukushima. This is a situation of the one of the largest economy in the world. Unfortunately, that is the situation of Japan. Unfortunately, sadly, we have confirmed it again, but we should not resign here. We have to stand up and we have to get together again. What we can do and what we should do. In that sense, this opportunity is really valuable. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Marumori-san, Iwata-san, and many other staff members who made this opportunity possible. Can you please stand up? We all really appreciate your hard work and contribution for giving us such a great opportunity. No, our thanks go to you, because we have been supported by you, Happy and Network, staff members, interpreters, though we cannot see them. And please give a great hand for their work, as well as to my staff members. And the staff members at the reception counter, many other numerous support has been given to us. Thank you very much. I'd like to appreciate my colleagues too. Thank you very much, Iwata-san. And there are many people coming all the way from distant regions and countries in Europe and the United States to here. Thank you very much for your time. This attempt should not be one-off thing. We have to continue this effort in many places. With this, I'd like to conclude this international symposium, Citizen Scientist International Symposium on Radiation Protection. Thank you very much. Please make sure to give your nameplate and the interpretation device back to the staff counter. Thank you very much. This is the end of the interpretation service. Have a good night.